Yellow Brick War, Chapter 13. The next morning, I frantically ran to Assistant Principal Scranton's office. Bonding with my mom was nice and all, but I had work to do, like save an entire enchanted kingdom before a magic-crazed nightmare razed it to the ground. Assistant Principal Scranton was about to meet the new, improved Amy Gum, and I was going to find out the truth about Dorothy. I had to wait to see him, but luckily I'd gotten to school early. Mrs. Perkins gave me another lollipop, and I crunched it while I waited. I couldn't help thinking about Gert, Mombi, and Glamora, lurking in their weird limbo state, waiting for me to accomplish something. Anything. And Knox. Where was he? Was he thinking about me too? Was he wondering if I was safe? Did he care? Was it possible to drive yourself completely insane in 15 minutes in a plastic chair in a hallway, or did you just feel that way? Finally, Assistant Principal Scranton called me into his office, looking none too pleased to see me. "What is it now, Miss Gum?" "Sir, I've been thinking about what you had said yesterday. I'm just so grateful you lifted my suspension, but it really doesn't seem fair." He raised an eyebrow, but did nothing as I continued. "I understand I was in so much trouble before, and I want to convince you that I've changed." I tried to remember the speech my mom had used on me. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," I added, "but I'm going to work for it all the same." "I beg your pardon?" "I want to serve detention, sir, after school, for the same amount of time as I should have been suspended." Assistant Principal Scranton stared at me. "You want detention?" "It's the only way to show I mean what I say," I explained. This didn't really make sense, even to me, but he seemed to buy it, or at least he couldn't figure out a sinister motive behind my sudden desire to scrub the hallways and dust the library. "Very well," he said. He narrowed his eyes. "You will serve out your suspension as a detention for the next 2 weeks. I don't know what you're up to, Miss Gum, but if I find out you're doing anything shady—" "I won't, sir," I said quickly, grabbing my bag and resisting the urge to give him a big kiss on the cheek. He was still staring after me in confusion as I ran out the door. I was so ready to start searching that I didn't pay attention to much of anything that day. I ate lunch with Dustin and Madison again. True to his word, Dustin had shown up to late for his first period, and that he too was sentenced to after-school purgatory. "Aren't you worried they'll kick you out of school too?" I asked him. "Are you kidding? I was on the football team," he said. Madison snorted in disgust and muttered something that sounded a lot like bullshit double standards. I was practically bouncing in my seat on the long, hard cafeteria bench. Dustin Jr. was in a cheerful mood, waving his arms around and drooling in his terry cloth onesie. Matching Madison taking after a baby, I was struck at how much she had changed. She was still tough, but now it seemed protective. You could tell she didn't really know what she was doing. Sometimes she seemed almost terrified of the baby, as if she might drop him or do something totally wrong. Dustin obviously had no clue how to deal with an infant either, but they both looked at the little guy with so much love. It was strange to see the person who made my life miserable for so long this caring and vulnerable. Madison had been good at everything without even trying, but I guess even Madison had no match for 10 pounds of screaming, spit-covered, easily damaged newborn. I wondered if my own mom had been anything like that when I was a baby, if she and my dad had looked at me with the same expression of dopey, helpless animal love, if anyone would ever love me like that again. Knox. I shoved that thought into a closet at the back of my brain and slammed the door. Knox had made his choice, and I didn't blame him. I knew Oz would always come first in his heart. If I felt that strongly about a place, I'd put it before people too. Maybe I just wasn't meant to have a home, but the least I could do was help Knox save his. "What are you thinking, Amy?" Madison, having secured Dustin Jr. in his baby wrap again, was looking at me. "You look like you went to another planet. A really, sad planet." "Nothing," I said a little too sharply, but she didn't seem to mind. "Yeah," she said, "I know all about that." For a second I wanted to snap at her. What did Madison know about real sadness? And then I thought of what her life must have been like now. How her so-called friends had bailed on her the second she turned into a teen mom warning story, and I realized that Madison probably knew a lot more about suffering than I gave her credit for. After-school detention was a motley collection of the school's biggest losers, whose number I probably would have counted among even if I hadn't offered to serve out my sentence. A couple of potheads, a guy I recognized from one of my classes junior year who was always getting in fights in the halls, and a girl who with a bleach blonde ratty perm and stonewashed jeans straight out of 1997, who rolled her eyes at me as I eagerly accepted my vacuum cleaner and dust rag. The shop teacher, Mr. Stone, handed out supplies to my fellow Dantees and then mumbled instructions so low that he might as well have been speaking another language. Just then the door swung open and Dustin walked in. "Hi, Amy," he said. "We should—" "No socializing," Mr. Stone said, coming to life a little. Dustin apologized and accepted his bottle of glass cleaner. "Help gum with the science classrooms," Mr. Stone added. "Actually, sir, I thought we could clean the library," Dustin said innocently. "That was my job last time. I'm a real expert." Mr. Stone stared at Dustin as if he was up to something, which of course he was. Sort of. But Dustin just looked back with a vacant, innocent expression. I had to look away or else I'd start cracking up. "Fine," Mr. Stone growled, "and I'll be checking up on you. Any hanky-panky?" He stopped short and then flushed red. One of the potheads snickered and sneezed the name of venereal disease. "That's enough," Mr. Stone barked. "For what? You're on bathroom duty, Carson." Mr. Stone tossed Dustin a set of keys, and I hid another smile as I followed him to the library. I never spent any time in the high school library. From what I could tell, nobody else had either. Dustin unlocked the door to what was more or less a glorified janitor closet, a tiny windowless room filled with rusting metal shelves, crammed with books that haven't been new when my mom was going to school here. It looked like the shelves hadn't been dusted since the last time Dustin served detention. The sad little book display arranged on a tiny table near the door was springtime themed, despite the fact that it was October. There wasn't even a librarian. If you wanted to check out books, you were supposed to borrow a teacher's keys and use the honor system. Literature theft wasn't exactly a high concern crime in our neck of the prairie. The school probably would have been excited just to learn that someone could actually read. The archive turned out to be the closet at the back of the library. Dustin flipped through the keys Mr. Stone had given him, but none of them fit the lock. "Shoot," he said. I looked at the flimsy wooden door and then at Dustin. He grinned. "Really?" "Come on," I said. "I did your homework for a year. You owe me." He nodded solemnly. "You do have a point there." Bracing one foot against the doorframe, he grabbed the doorknob and pulled. Muscle bulged under the soft fabric of his cornflower blue t-shirt, and I remembered with a pain that I once had a major crush on the guy. Dustin might be a little dumb, but he was hot. The door creaked alarmingly, and with one final tug, it came away from the frame with a splittering crack. "Wow," I said. "I didn't think that would actually work. You're really strong." Dustin blushed modestly. "It's just like laminate," he mumbled. "We're going to be in so much trouble," I said, looking at the ruined look. "Nah," he said. "Nobody comes in here. They won't notice for years." Eagerly, I looked over his shoulder at the contents of the closet. A teetering stack of dusty cardboard boxes, piles of faded fabric, and weirdly enough, a dusty hoe. That was it. The entire historical archive of Flat Hill, Kansas. "I guess this place was always a dump," I said. Dustin pulled the top box of the stack, grunting with surprise at how heavy it was. I lifted the lid, revealing a stack of ancient yearbooks. The top one was dated 1967. "Far out," Dustin said, leafing through it. "Check out this dude's hair." He pointed to a blissed-out-looking hippie guy with shampoo commercial-worthy blonde waves past his shoulders. "Totally not fair," I said. I shoved the box aside and went for the next one, while Dustin looked at all the yearbooks. More yearbooks, a box of old newspapers, none of them dating back to the time of Baum's article. A leather-bound book whose title, Tales of the Prairie, was embossed in the front in frilly letters. Nothing. My heart sank. The piles of fabric were old-fashioned aprons and a frayed blue banner with "Congratulations, Class of 1934," sewn on with bright red letters. "I guess that's it," Dustin said in disappointment. "There's one more box," I said. "Way in the back." "I don't see it." I reached for the box and then yanked my hands back with a yelp. It had stung me. I popped a finger in my mouth, tasting blood. "There's something sharp back there," I said. "I don't even see what you're trying to grab." I reached in again, more cautiously this time, and then I felt it, like a halo around the battered old box. the unmistakable buzz of magic. A thrill ran through me. I'd been right. There was something here, and something had tried to hide it. Someone powerful enough to use magic in Oz. Someone who's been able to keep the truth about Dorothy a secret for over a century. Someone who had to be from Oz. "Give me those dust cloths," I said. Just as Dustin handed them to me, the library door swung open, and we both froze. "I don't see much cleaning happening in here," Mr. Stone growled. Dustin's eyes were huge. "Oh, shit," he mouthed.